Not all Trump voters are traditionally down the line Republican voters. But can the Republican politicians get those Trump voters to become down the line Republican voters? That's the question. So this is from NBC News, Steve Kornacki, the GOP's post-election challenge, turning Trump voters into full-fledged Republicans. So even with their success, this election revealed a challenge for Republicans going forward. The Trump coalition and the GOP coalition are not quite the same. That is totally true. There are a lot of people who split their ticket, voted Democratic candidates lower down, and voted for Donald Trump at the top of their ticket. See, for example, the AOC voters who also voted for Trump at the presidential level. By driving up support even further with white blue-collar voters and earning substantial new backing from non-white young and first-time voters, President-elect Trump swept the battleground states and secured a national popular vote victory. But in the 5 battlegrounds that also featured Senate races, GOP candidates all received far fewer votes than Trump, enough to cost the party 4 of them and nearly all 5. While it's customary for fewer total votes to be cast in down-ballot races, the drop-off was notably worse for Republicans than for the Democratic Senate candidates. There's also a possibility that Kamala Harris was just not that popular, actually, and that people didn't like the fact that she was associated with Biden, but they definitely felt motivated to vote for their Democrats lower down on the ticket. Individual candidate and campaign dynamics can certainly account for some of this. In Arizona, for instance, Republican Kari Lake's broad unpopularity clearly gave an extra boost to Democrat Ruben Gallego, who actually received more votes than Vice President Kamala Harris did at the top of their party's ticket. So yeah, I think people were definitely motivated to vote against Kari Lake. She's a really, really repulsive candidate, a total Trump sycophant, very far right, an election denier. She claimed that the election with Katie Hobbs, actually where she lost in 2022 for the governor's race, was stolen from her. So it's just kind of interesting how, she kind of is just like Trump, but in the state of Arizona, people were more repulsed by her than they were repulsed by Trump. And that's why Gallego wins, but Donald Trump also wins the state of Arizona. But taken as a whole, the overall pattern is striking, especially in light of recent history. In the 2 previous presidential elections combined, just one state produced a split White House/Senate outcome. That was in Maine in 2020, when voters re-elected Republican Senator Susan Collins while backing Democrat Joe Biden for president. Susan Collins, of course, being a very moderate Republican, someone who usually would join forces with John McCain, as well as Lisa Murkowski against Donald Trump when he was president. There are several likely factors at work here, but 2 stand out as potential longer-term issues for the GOP. The first involves voters who were motivated to turn out for Trump but then skipped all of the other races on the ballot. There's some evidence for this. My colleague Scott Bland found that in Nevada's Washoe County, the second largest in the state, 6.6% of Trump's voters either left the Senate race blank or went with a third-party candidate or used the state's unique none of these candidates option. Meanwhile, 4.9% of Harris voters did the same. This accounts only for a small portion of the GOP drop-off in Nevada, but it's a result that's consistent with a feature of our NBC News polling this year. We found Trump faring best with infrequent voters who expressed a lower level of interest in the election and were disproportionately young, non-white, and male. It's plausible that a significant number of these people ended up being Trump-only voters, raising the question of whether the GOP can convert them into full-fledged Republican voters in the future when Trump won't be on the ballot. Yeah, that's the question. The bros who got energized by Donald Trump from watching Joe Rogan or something, will they feel that same energy for these generic GOP politicians? I don't know. Some of those GOP politicians are a lot less entertaining to watch than Donald Trump is, because for all Trump's problems, he is an entertaining man. He's very, very funny. And a lot of these Republican guys are just banal, generic, typical politicians. And there's plenty of them in the Democratic Party too. They're not super entertaining to watch. and they might not appeal to some of these guys and their masculine desire to change the structure of government and feel revolutionary. This appears to have been at work in Wisconsin, where Trump won by about 30,000 votes, even as Democratic Senator Tammy Baldwin was re-elected by roughly the same margin. The drop-off from Trump to his party's Senate candidate, Eric Hovde, was most pronounced in rural blue-collar counties, many of which had been Democratic territory until Trump's emergence. Here, Trump expanded his support even further, which was key to his statewide victory, but those gains didn't trickle down the ballot. Republicans will need to find a way to make that happen in the future without Trump. Yep. How will they do it when they have probably J.D. Vance at the top of their ticket? Or, I don't know, Marco Rubio, Ted Cruz, Ron DeSantis, Vivek Ramaswamy? You know, it's an interesting question. You know, I feel like we're in kind of a similar territory to how they were thinking they'd handle things after Reagan. You know, Reagan wins in 2 landslides. Trump did not win in landslides. He won all the swing states, but he only won by 1.5 points in the popular vote. Like, what's the Republican Party going to be like after Trump? And will voters who had this little interlude, this affair with voting for Republicans just in the form of Trump, go back to the Democratic Party? Will they stop voting altogether because they're just bored by the Republican Party and they don't feel the same energy as they did when Trump was at the top of their ticket? I don't know. What do you think? How do you think this will impact the swing states going forward? Will the Republicans capture the people who just had this little affair with Trump? I'm interested to hear. If you found this video interesting or insightful, please leave a like, comment, or subscribe to the channel. As always, thank you so much for watching, and I look forward to speaking to you in my next video.